But let me, of course, welcome you all to our Community Council Chairs meeting. Thank you for both, obviously, the service that you provide, but for, I think, a good year of our interactions and for the work that you do in your neighborhoods, on behalf of your neighborhoods. And I always like when I'm in any forum to talk about what incredible neighborhoods we have across the board in our city, and that while I think to much of the rest of the state we're viewed as being quite different in many ways, and that's fair to say. When it comes to our community and neighborhoods, we are incredibly strong neighborhoods, and your work as part of that, I think the mic just came on, but your work as part of that obviously is a huge element in the success of our neighborhoods over time and going forward, so thank you for your work. We've got a few people here I know who are new. Most of us have been together in one form or another for quite some time, so I'm going to ask we just go around quickly and introduce ourselves, which neighborhood we are from and represent.
Bill David, Walport.
Maggie Shaw, elderly charity group.
You said that with a certain amount of glee.
I did. Amy Berry.
I'm Mike Healy, Chair of Sunnyside East Association.
I'm Judy Sherman, first vice chair of Shared House. What Maggie didn't say is we made her run for vice chair, so she's getting
Daryl High, East Liberty Park.
Aaron Youngberg, West Point. Brandon Dayton, Rose Park.
Blake Perez, Rose Park Community Council.
Joanne Anderson, Jordan Mouse.
Valerie Ball, Liberty Grove.
Michael Dodd, Wasatch Hollow.
Lynn Pershing, Yellcrest.
Marianne Wright, I am now officially past chair of the Rapids Community Council. Diane Leonard.
Christian Harrison, downtown.
Right, thanks. Let's go around and
Deputy Chief Fred Ross with the Police Department.
Elizabeth Bueller, City's Home Services Coordinator.
Stanton, community manager.
might just stand up so people can hear you a little bit. Oh, you should come up. Yeah.
Robin Stanton, community manager.
And you should come up to the table. Our community council members who are here are the ones who should be at the table. We can make room for more. So please come up. Yeah, go ahead.
Becky Dobbs, outgoing community chair for Buffer.
Great. Come on up, please.
And Dennis Ferris, Honda Road.
I'm Chelsea Eddy, I'm the refugee liaison for Mayor Becker.
Sean McDonough, community liaison for Mayor Becker.
I'm Michael Stott, Community Liaison for Mayor Becker.
And any of you, including obviously, of course, our staff, who have not grabbed lunch, please do so. As per usual, we really, I think, want this to be a more a social event associated with the holiday season. Not really the business of our neighborhoods and our community interactions here. But I do want us to spend time and not only celebrate the season, but really talk about things that you want to share with us. And we always put a portion of the time on the agenda to talk about some things we think that will be of interest to you going into the season, whatever season we're in, or going into some things that we see happening on the horizon that we think will be of particular interest in neighborhoods. So we try to keep those presentations short. So we will do that again, and then we'll take a little bit of a break for the outgoing community council chairs. Every year we do a little photo op session with the chairs and provide a certificate of thanks. And then we'll leave the rest of the time open for discussion for anything on your minds that you want to discuss with me or with the city. So with that, review of the agenda, I'm going to turn time over to Michael Studd. All of you know, many of you work with closely and have for a long time, talking about our snow removal program.
Hello, everybody. This presentation, is a little bit cold, so I'm going to bundle up. I'm going to try to pick up the sound. This little video.
While Salt Lake City has the best snow on Earth, it's always made it difficult for people to get around in a snowstorm. Ever since settling the valley, snow removal has been an issue facing the city government and the streets department. In the early days, horses were used to drag snowplows across sidewalks, but the icy sidewalks plagued the city. In fact, according to the Salt Lake Herald-Republican in 1910, Police Chief S.M. Barlow ordered his officers to investigate the slippery sidewalks downtown and make arrests without hesitation when they found storekeepers and property owners negligent. "I can take a fall and get up again without calling a doctor," the chief told the newspaper, but there are a lot who suffer severely when a strip of icy sidewalk dislodges their feet. The next 40 years would see the number of paved streets in the city increase exponentially, and with that growth came the need to clear even more snow. By 1938, the city had 23 equipment trucks and 13 snowplows, manned by a crew of 100 men on call to clear the snow with the trucks and by hand. In order to aid in the snow removal effort at that time, the Streets Department was authorized to remove any car left parked on the street after 2 a.m. if it interfered with their operation. By 2014, city snowplow operations required 98 employees, 45 snowplows, and 16 to 20,000 tons of salt every year, and they drive enough every season to circle the globe more than 3 times.
So while we don't arrest business owners who fail to clear the ice off their sidewalks, we are looking at doing some new things this winter in the city's snow program. So I'm going to briefly cover those. There's a lot to cover here, so I'm going to cruise through the whole presentation, and then we'll see if there's time for questions at the end, if that's okay. The 3 things I'm going to cover are sidewalk snow removal ordinance update, second is sidewalk and crosswalk pilot study, and third is parking restriction pilot study. 2 pilot studies going on this year. There are sidewalks, folks. The snow removal ordinance was clarified this last fall, and we've been trying to get the word out at your community council meetings, those that we've gone to in the last month or so. These are the changes, and the changes are summarized on that advisory flyer that I handed out. It says snow removal advisory. So the first one is, we used to say clear the whole width of the sidewalk. We now say clear a path that's 42 inches wide, or if the sidewalk is less than 42 inches, clear the full width. We used to say clear the full length of the sidewalk. It still says that, but we clarified that we want you to do corners and curb ramps. Just to make that clear to the property owners on corners, we want you to do the curb ramp down to the gutter. You're not expected to do the street, obviously. And the third one, we clarified that ice must be removed to bare pavement or made as level as possible and treated with ice melt, sand, or similar material. So the purpose of these is to help be clear to the residents and business owners and help enforcement have a better idea of just what they're supposed to be covering. This, clearing the whole width of the sidewalk, you know, you go with your shovel down the sidewalk, you might get some little snowballs or something to roll down after you pass. And enforcement before now wasn't sure, you know, is that a violation of the ordinance? So the typical sidewalk is 48 inches wide, and we built in a 6-inch buffer, or if you split that 3 inches on either side, that gives you 42-inch width that you're supposed to clear. To be safe, I suggest clearing the whole sidewalk. But this one with ice is important because, especially 2 years ago when it was very cold, people were clearing the ice as flat as they could, but you know, some of it would still persist, even if it was down kind of in the groovings of the concrete. And so the city said, well, we understand that you may do your best and it's still not totally removed. So this gives you a little wiggle room now to make it as level as possible and treat it with ice, melt, sand, or similar material. We are trying to get the word out about this and all of these other snow program activities with an education campaign. We plan on sending a press release once the snow flew, and we're still waiting to send that out. But we are creating a couple of video clips, and that's actually Brian and his team who made this clip we just watched, and there's another one that's going to be about plowing and moving snow from sidewalks and whatnot. We've got flyers like this, so this advisory flyer you can copy, and I always say this in community council meetings, give it to your neighbor with a smile and a plate of cookies to remind them of what the ordinance says. And we're also doing a Neighbor Helping Neighbor campaign. So we understand there are some people who need assistance with snow removal, and we're encouraging people to be aware of their neighbors who might need assistance and help them out. The ordinance is only for sidewalks, so if you're really trying to help neighbors comply with the ordinance, it's just the sidewalks that the city wants done. And it's up to you if you want to do their entire driveway or make a path to their house. We also, on the enforcement end, are doing some different things. There's this new hang tag that you all have in front of you that civil enforcement will now put on people's doors if they get a warning or a ticket. One problem in the past was we would send a ticket in the mail, and the property owner wouldn't know for a day or two that they received a citation. But the complaints keep coming in, and we keep going out, and they're in violation in that period of time. So now they are leaving a communication. They actually do try to contact the person at their home if they find a violation, but if nobody answers the door, they're going to leave one of these, showing that they have a warning or a ticket issued. There is now one warning for the property owner per winter. So the city has increased its education approach to this, and we feel like that's reasonable to give everybody a warning. And finally, we have a disability accommodation. If somebody calls us or speaks with a civil enforcement officer and says they have a disability, we are going to provide an accommodation by first just giving them a warning at that time, and then giving them a 7-day window to come into compliance. And we're offering to put hang tags, different colors, but of this size, on neighbors' properties, saying, your neighbor at this address could use some assistance, could you please reach out to them and help? So that's it on our first topic.
What year was that photo?
I don't know. I think it's Photoshop. You can see the trees are way up there. Next topic is sidewalk and crosswalk pilot study. We started this last winter on Foothill and on 400 South. And we're expanding it slightly this year. The purpose is weighing the cost and benefits of the city conducting certain sidewalk snow removal in challenging areas. So the reason we did Foothill is a lot of properties back on to Foothill. Those property owners would have to go around the block to clear the snow to comply with the ordinance because those sidewalks on the back of their properties are still adjacent to their property. Foothill's also challenged because the UDOT plows go 45 miles an hour and they're always throwing snow and crud up onto the sidewalk. We are expanding the sidewalk pilot over to the west side this year on Redwood, 700 to 1700 north. This is a route that a lot of junior high kids travel to get to Northwest Middle School. That stretch only has sidewalk on the west side, but we're trying it out there. Again, this year we're doing corners and crosswalks on 400 South, just out here, between Main and 900 East. And that's obviously with tracks and all businesses, a very high pedestrian zone. So the city's trying it out to see, what does it cost us to do this kind of service in certain key areas, and what are the benefits. So after this year's pilot study, we'll be pulling data together and having a conversation with administration and with the city council about whether this is desirable to continue something as an actual service in the future. So not so applicable to what we've got outside right now, but cross your fingers, skiers. The third item is the parking restriction pilot study. You might have heard about this. Let me say first that last winter we put together a proposal and we put it on Open City Hall, and it was to restrict parking if there was snow on the road at any time. So it was very broad. We got feedback. There were a lot of people who had concerns, especially people who relied on on-street parking. So we decided to pull it back, and our work group had several meetings to discuss what would a scaled back version of this look like. And we came up with this pilot study, which is extremely scaled back from what was originally proposed. The purpose is to improve traffic flow, street access, cycling access, safety, parking, garbage pickup, drainage, and to reduce snowbound vehicles, curbside snow, snow and driveway approaches, and complaints, we hope. There's a little bit of a trade-off here, because some people are going to lose some parking a couple times a year on one side of the street. But there are a lot of challenges that come with snow removal, especially on the narrow streets. As you can see, this plow is trying to go around garbage cans. It's going to create this huge windrow right in front of it, which the property owner is going to have to try to drag out there after the garbage is collected. And we have problems with cars becoming snowbound and stuck. And on the real narrow streets, it can be a challenge for the plows to negotiate those streets. So here's the pilot study. The city would declare a heavy snow alert, and there are some conditions such as 3 inches or more that are forecast, cold temperatures following the storm, where we think the snow is going to persist, it won't melt quickly, a series of snowstorms in a row. So these are, the real 1-2 punches snowstorms. We estimate that this would be declared 2 to 5 times per year, is all. And people would be notified of the declaration by registering, by phone. They can register and then they can get a phone call, a text, an email, well, the phone number they can call into. It'll be on the city website. We'll be pushing it out through social media. So the Public Services Department's come up with a number of ways to get the word out about this declaration. This is what's restricted. On-street parking will be restricted on 9 streets designated for this highway. On one side of the street from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. It's only in the middle of the night, it's only one side of the street. And we're only declaring these 2 to 5 times per year. The enforcement during the pilot is only informational warning notices. I think we are going to actually use parking enforcement paper, the paper that the citations get written on, because it's waterproof. People might get a little worried if they see a notice like that on their car, but when they read it, they'll realize that this is just a test and only a test. Had it been a real pilot study, you might have received a citation or something. This is what the signs will look like, and here's a list of the 9 streets. The group had a long discussion about these to spread them out through all the city council districts. So these Ds, these are the city council districts that they're in. They wanted to get half of them east-west, half north-south, and then a variety of street types, and what are the uses on the street, what are the widths of the street. So they have mailed out over 3,500 informational postcards to property owners on these streets. They've already reached out to them. Does anyone here have to live on one of these streets? No? They are also going to go door to door and pass out these door hangers here. And they'll be using this month to get people signed up for the noticing. That's it. Those are the 3 programs. Does anybody have any questions?
Michael?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Could you be so kind if you could send out copies of those notices so we can put them on our website?
Sure. I'll turn this to a PDF and I can email this out to everybody. There's a much longer presentation that Public Services gave on that third one, the restricted parking item pilot, a couple days ago at the City Council meeting. And if you want all of that information, we can get our hands on that one and send that as well.
We can link that to the council website. We can use kind of just that, the flyer and information you have.
Sure.
We can post on our website and get it.
Absolutely.
PDF form that we can send out.
Yes, that one, PDF, I'll send that to.
Can I ask a question about this? In the interest of sustainability, the city uses an awful lot of white space on papers like this and their reports. Planning commission reports would probably be a third smaller if the margins were bigger. And I often think, we have people that come to our council that don't have computers and or are just visiting for the evening. I'd like to be able to have this in some kind of half sheet kind of format, so I don't have to use solid paper.
Sure. We can figure out how to do that. As a PDF, we might be able to, there's a printing function in Adobe Reader where you can print two on there. I might have to actually make the document has two versions. So, yeah, I can work with you all on doing that.
Okay, other questions for Michael on this? Michael, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, you can tell this is, snow removal is one of those topics that we all get into, and including the council members, in great detail. Hopefully it means that we'll have a better snow removal system and work with the neighbors better, and it's always a work in progress. So thanks for your help on that. Next, community policing. Deputy Chief Fred Ross is here to speak to that. I know we've had a whole array of both questions and comments around the establishment of the Metro Unit in downtown to help us focus some more attention on a lot of the criminal activity associated with, but to be distinguished from our homeless population and homeless facilities in the Home Depot area, and the Grand area there. And there have been concerns expressed, I know, about how that affects policing in the rest of the city. So, whenever you...
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. When I talked with Karen and she invited me, we never did connect. She's been very, very busy as far as an agenda, exactly what you want to talk. So we're going to kind of leave it open. But let me just speak real quickly about the Metro Support Bureau. For the last 2 years, we've really been watching this area. And this 2 summers ago, it became very, very violent down there. And the officers felt very apprehensive to go into that area without rolling in 2 to 3 deep. There were a lot of threats that were made on our officers, and so we started looking at it over the next year. What we determined was 25% of the crime in the city is happening within that small geographic area. A little over 35% occurs in District 5. So we looked at it and we said, okay, why is this occurring, and what can we do to make it better? What we had was, we had some bike officers, we had a few narcotics officers, we had some patrol officers that were responding all over the city, and they would have to come in there. They didn't have the knowledge or all the resources to deal with the population in that area. So the model that we decided to come up with was to bring it under one central command. So we have pieces and parts from throughout the department, i.e. We have bikes down there, we have motors down there, we have 6 detectives that work nothing but, I shouldn't say nothing but work all the cases that occur down there, which is an extreme large volume, and we have patrol officers. One of the questions when this was first announced was, okay, well, you're taking officers out of other areas of the city. That is not the case. There were 18 officers that were assigned to the downtown area prior to that, but they were being farmed out all over the city. They were, going to Sugar House when we didn't have a car or a back in Sugar House. They were going to Rose Park. So they were assigned there, but they weren't always there. And that's why it was starting to kind of get out of hand. We still, the Metro officers that work down there, we still respond outside of the Metro Bureau to help the rest of the city, far more than people that come in. And one of the benefits of having these officers down there is they know all the resources. And as the mayor mentioned, our goal is, we know there's a lot of people down there that are preying on the homeless. We want to separate those two. And Elizabeth is here. We're working every day very, very diligently to get the resources to those that legitimately need them, that are there for the right reason, so we can get them out of there and they're not victimized. So far, it's working. I think it's working well. Is it going to go away tomorrow? No. For those that have been in the city, clear back when I started 20 plus years ago, it was so bad around Pioneer Park that there were Jersey barriers around the park, and the park was closed. The park is not so much the issue. Well, it's still got work to be done. More of the drug traffic and such has moved over toward the homeless shelter, which is impacting a lot of the businesses. So it's an effective policing model because it's all under one command. When the mayor asked the chief, why is this going on? He doesn't have to go to 3 different chiefs that have a different piece down there. He comes directly to me and says, Fred, what do you do? And I have to answer to it, and he's going to respond to the mayor with that. And if I'm not doing my job, then he's going to find somebody else that will. So that's kind of the background of the Metro support, and I'll entertain plenty of questions for you. The other item that Karen had mentioned with me was the statistics that you guys generally get. Just a little background of mine. When I was a rookie officer, I was on the Avenues Community Council. I think that's when the mayor was running for the legislature back then. We both lived up in the Avenues. And so I was concerned about what was going on in my neighborhood. And I was a police officer. I worked the Avenues, but I also wanted to help out the community. From there, I moved out to Sugar House. And Judy, I was out there for a few years. And then when the chief instituted the community intelligence officers, the CIU unit, I was one of the first 7 that went in there. Very much to my surprise, prior to that, for those of you who've been around for a while, we had the CAT teams. I got a call on Thursday, said be in the chief's office on Friday. I was a homicide detective. I was told Sunday, you're now doing this. I was like, whoa, wow. But it is an extremely effective program, and I'll explain why. Prior to that, prior to getting promoted, you stayed in that assignment that you were in until they called your number, and then you just went out and did it. Now, we have the opportunity to get them out working with you so that they can train the troops. Hey, we need to work with the community councils. We need to be responsive to them. We need to hear what the issues are, and we need to address them. The other part to that is the camaraderie of those officers. Because they're working together for a period of time. Sometimes it's only 10 months and you'll get somebody promoted, which is difficult, but they are highly, highly dedicated because the carrot is out there. They want to get promoted. I spent 10 months in there. Some have spent 2+ years. It all depends on what's happening. Right now, we've had a couple of retirements announced as of late. So that is some things that we need to work through, the longevity there. But the people that are coming in there, it doesn't take them very long to step up and get acclimated with the area. When I went back in, I immediately said, I'm going back to Sugar House. I love it. A lot of synergy up there, and I've taken it in a heartbeat. So I know for a long, long time, you guys were, and I'll pass these around, you guys were getting a statistical sheet similar to this, provided to you by, and correct me if I'm wrong, by the CIU officers. Some of them were formatted differently, but this, when I was in detectives and other areas of the department, this is what I would see. And the issue that I had with this was it's not absolute, i.e. the numbers come in because that's the NCI code that is given when the report is taken. But if you look at the very first one, forcible rape, and I just brought this as an example, it's District 7, fairly recent. But the problem with that being is a lot of these, they're reported as such, and maybe this is not a great example right now, but it's reported as such. But then 2 weeks later, we find out, wait, this didn't even occur in our jurisdiction. The other agency wouldn't take the report, so we did. But it comes up and it shows here. So the last one we did, and I forget which district, they showed an increase of 12 over a 30-day period. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, it was actually District 4. I said, wait a minute, let's look through that. And when we did, half of them were not legitimate numbers. So it takes a little bit of time. So you just need to be cognizant. The other piece of this, if you look at larceny and theft, those are very, very high. But if you live in District 5, who's the chair for 5? Are they here? District 5. So if you live there, we got to remember Walmart is there, right? So if you're looking at this and that caveat is not thrown out there, hey, the Walmart is there, you're looking at it and saying, holy moly, our neighborhoods, you know, people are stealing stuff right and left. Larcenies and theft, that's from yards. Well, a lot of those could be shoplifts. Same thing as you go down, it's kind of, if you go down to the part 2, it's stolen property. You've only got a very small portion. So on our website, if I can just navigate this real quick, technology changes so frequently, and the way to collect data and get it out to you guys changes constantly. So if I can go to, try to go to the home. I'm not a Mac user, so. For a long, long time, we were using crime reports. How many of you have used crime reports? Pretty good, but it's not as good as it was. It's kind of falling off. So you have the opportunity. Okay. And it'll give you the information as far as crimes and stuff. So I'm going to scroll back up if I can. How do I go back to that? I want to go to that home page. Just up there is the one. So I was just looking at this and I found it through the home page. So let's see if we can move back here. And this is a little bit different now than I was looking at, but
Yeah, this is the new one.
yeah, this is the.
It's better, it's more intuitive.
Do you like it?
I do. It's
Okay.
much more intuitive too.
Okay, yeah, there's my badge I was looking for. Sorry. So there's the little disclaimer comes up there. You can do it by council, you can do it by zip code and everything. The only thing that it doesn't do in this version is it doesn't show you the little pin maps as to where those actually occur. So I just need the feedback from you all. We're looking at another tool. What is it that you really, really want? And I know by us saying, hey, just go, instead of us, as Judy said, using white space and paper, there are plenty of people that go to the community council meetings that don't have access to computers. So I just need to hear back from you the best way that you want us to get you those statistics.
But you can choose all the different types of crime. You choose
Correct.
actually even your own neighborhood.
Correct.
And see what things are happening.
Correct.
So it's,
So maybe I will give everybody my email. If you guys want to look at this, give me some feedback on it, and then we'll try to tweak it the best that we can. It's going to be very difficult to tweak it, for every different council, making it different. That's a lot of programming, but whatever you guys need, we will get you. Yeah.
The biggest thing is really having access to the definitions for like aggravated assault, and larceny. Those are internal terms. They don't always have the same meaning.
Sure, because everybody always uses the term, I was robbed. Well, what happened? They stole the wagon out of my backyard. Yeah, technically not a robbery. That's a great point. I will make sure that we get the terms on there. We'll just have a glossary. That would be extremely helpful.
So Chief, let me ask you one thing that I know I've been seeing a lot of communication about and hearing about, and that's a sense, I think, amongst the folks that may or may not be in reality, that as we focus more attention to the metro unit in downtown, that is affecting our law enforcement presence and responses in the other neighborhoods.
The numbers that we've looked at, and I forget where we published them, it was actually in council sometime during a work session. That is not the case. You're not seeing it. While you may see something here or there that you didn't see before, but we're not seeing an increase in crime in other areas because of what we're doing. The officers are not being called out of your neighborhoods to come downtown. We didn't take any officers that weren't already downtown out of that. And we're actually being a lot more successful by identifying people, because how many robberies have we had in the city? We've had a gaggle of them as of late, and they're convenience store robberies and such. We've had an awful lot. And those are all, I'm going to go a step out on a limb, the majority of them are driven by drug use, okay? You all saw the Shield robber some months ago that did the Cafe Noé, did a couple banks. All I did is I went down to the shelter, pulled out my phone, showed the picture, and I said, I've got $500 to anybody that can call in on here. Within 48 hours, that occurred. We're not pushing it out. The people that are out committing these crimes, not only in Salt Lake City, but other areas of the valley, they're coming back down here to buy their drugs. So the crime that's occurring down there in other areas, we're being a lot more effective. The detectives that don't work that area, they'll send a picture to us. We'll have them identified in minutes. And we wouldn't, I pushed really, really hard with Chief Burbank and asked him to get smartphones for everybody that worked in that area, because there's so much intelligence going on. So we're getting information out to the officers in minutes, and we're having these people identified. One of the struggles that we are having is keeping people in jail. As I spoke at a meeting earlier today, one individual's been arrested 38 times, like 14 since November, and he keeps getting out, and we arrest him the next day. He gets out, he gets arrested the next day. So if that's your sense, if I may just give it to you real quick, my email, that's the easiest way to reach me, because sometimes I don't get to it until the middle of the night. But it's Fred, F-R-E-D, .Ross at slcgov.com.
Chief, you said this doesn't have the maps that show where crimes occur. Is that a feature that we added? And the question that goes with this, can we customize this for specific neighborhoods and all the trends?
You can now, but it'll only give you the line graph, it won't give you
Location.
the exact location.
Can you add that feature showing by location?
Not in this version.
I've seen that, so.
Which is through crime reports.
Will Salt Lake City still report crime reports so that it would be a second source?
Yes, and we were talking this morning about, okay, why don't we just keep crime reports on the public safety or the public facing side as well, so you can actually use both.
And crime reports is where you can find out where the sex offenders live in your neighborhood if everything right.
Well, you can find that, there's plenty of ways to find that, but yes, you can.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes.
I've got two things, and this isn't just thinking. Is there anything that you can do by season? Because certain crimes do happen at different times of the season. I don't know if you can, I know that there's the timeline on the bottom. I don't know if you can correlate with, larceny goes up during summer or something like that. Just a thought.
Car thefts always go up in the winter, I'll tell you that. Okay?
I don't know, maybe there's some interactive feature that you can work on. I don't know, just throwing something out
But you
there.
see, it is month by
You
month.
can do year over
It
year.
is what it is.
It is month by month.
On the bottom there.
Yeah, month from 12 to 12.
And I don't know, I can see that, but maybe there's like certain levels, I don't know, different colors that you can say, okay, it's getting high during this time and then it cools down essentially. I don't know, just trying to be creative and see what interactive ways you can.
Sure, thank you. And I'll be honest, we use heat maps and a lot of that we look at daily for deployment purposes. But to just send it out to the general public, it would be extremely confusing.
Sure, and then the other thing that I had to mention on was I work over at Art Space and across the street from the road home, and they have cracked down on their parking permits, and I have seen a significant decrease in drug trafficking in my parking spot. That's Art Space. There's a whole other parking lot just south that's unregulated, that's unchecked. There's no paid parking along 3rd South or 2nd South, right, on that main corridor. That's key right there, is the traffic.
No, you're absolutely right. And if you travel that corridor by total accident, we discovered when they were doing the brick crosswalks, how clean that was when they closed that down there. So we do that, we keep it open for business traffic, but at night, we close that. But that lot, I've been working with the RDA it was supposed to go live November 1, to have a contract to come in and tow, because in SDI, which shares some of that lot, they offered to print the permits. It was supposed to go live November 1, but that part, that south part, behind the old SDI where the dock is supposed to be, no parking without permit, just like the Art Space.
So I'll just mention that both the level of detail, the cross-fertilization, not just from police, but with all of the social service providers, all of the other organizations associated with that area are, I don't know how, is it daily, weekly? Elizabeth, I know you're coordinating a lot of that for us.
So at most, we have, Fred and I, we meet weekly with all the service providers in the neighborhood to talk specifically about issues that PD sees, but also the service provider sees, so we can all work in conjunction. But it's daily. We're having meetings. We've already had 2 meetings together today. We're gonna have another one, and those service providers are also in the room, so we're constantly talking about these issues.
So this is obviously an intensive effort on our part, for protection of the community as a whole, to try to address problems in this neighborhood. And I can tell you the kind of intense effort you're seeing going on from Salt Lake City is also happening with other jurisdictions. We're working very closely with Salt Lake County, which is responsible for health and a lot of the services associated with health. We're working with the state that's doing a lot around homelessness. We're going to just be continuing to both intensify and broaden and deepen the effort. We'll be seeing some things coming up here, really literally in the next month, 2 months, depending on how you calculate weeks during the holiday season here, where we're going to be looking not only in terms of this sort of short-term intensity of effort, but also longer-term around some of the issues around homelessness. And if you think about it, those of you who've been around for a while, 30 years ago when these facilities were first established, this was a part of downtown where very few, if any, people lived or had businesses. It is now almost the center of downtown, and that will increasingly be so. And so that in itself creates conflicts, as Christian can attest to probably better than anybody. But it also means we need to take a fresh look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. We have been incredibly successful. I was on a phone call, in fact, a national phone call, in fact, this morning, where Salt Lake City is looked at as the model for how to address homelessness around the country. And you saw that we were the first city, we in Phoenix, together to effectively eliminate veterans homelessness in our city. And it's a testament to the people who work in this field and have worked in it now for decades, who have found the model, and it all is around what's called the Housing First model. And then increasing capacity and people working together, which I've learned does not happen in a lot of jurisdictions very well. That we have been successful, but we have so far to go, and we are, in many respects, behind the times. And so it's kind of a dual effort. It's an effort around the community and the neighborhood, and it's an effort around homelessness, which I think we all want to see addressed in a very humane and compassionate way, and is also effective. And we're going to continue, I can tell you, to work on these matters in a comprehensive way and continue to make progress. Our goal is to eliminate homelessness. We've reduced chronic homelessness in Salt Lake City by 75% since 2006, which is pretty amazing, using this Housing First model. And so it's really within sight in terms of the chronic element part of homelessness, and there's always going to be a transient population around homelessness. And what, you can correct me, Chief Ross, on this, but the really unfortunate part is the degree to which the criminal population now embeds itself in the homeless population as a shield. And our homeless friends, as Pamela Atkinson, who I love to, give her credit for that term, they're the greatest victims of everyone. We're hopefully going to continue to make some better progress on it, because it's tough. It's tough when you're in the neighborhood. It's obviously tough on the homeless population. It's tough on our resources, and it's just not a healthy situation for our community. But this is true across the United States. This is every major urban area. It's interesting when we get together and compare notes and talk about what's working and what's not working and how we can improve what we're doing. There are a lot of different approaches going on out there, and we're learning from each other. I always refer to my work with local government officials as a healthy competition, because we like to sort of talk about things where we're being successful, but then we're also continuing learning from each other, and hopefully that'll be true in this matter as well. Anyway, thank you, Chief Ross. And Elizabeth, these guys do an incredible job. Thank you all so much, those of you who have been chairs. You obviously didn't give a full explanation of the job of the incoming chairs, although some of you have lived it before. But I know it's a real labor of love, but not an easy responsibility, and we appreciate it on behalf of the city. So let's just open this up. Anything that is on your minds, either you want to share with other community council chairs or other neighborhoods in the city, or questions or comments you have about something going on in the city, I'm happy to answer anything I can, and have others here who may know more than I do about any particular topic, or we'll get answers for something we may not be able to answer today. But please go ahead. Yeah.
Mayor, I'm wondering what advice you give.
Use the mic if you would.
Any advice you give to the community as
is, we're looking to mobilize a little bit regarding the prison relocation process, and there's a meeting on the 22nd. We're looking to show up and express some concern. Any pointers you could give us about being relevant and appropriate and how to go about that?
Well, yeah, I think as hopefully all of you know, when the announcement of the finalists came out, there were originally 4 sites. It's now been expanded to 6. 2 of those sites are in Salt Lake City, both on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. And one north of the airport and one west of the airport in the Northwest Quadrant area. My initial knee-jerk reaction was not only no, but hell no, in terms of our city and in terms of those locations particularly. But I did not want to give just a knee-jerk reaction. So our city folks went through a thorough analysis of the commission's criteria, our own information, because they were looking statewide. They were not looking at specifics in terms of the sites they were looking at in any detail. We obviously have a lot more information that was available to them in terms of the sites, and presented to the commission a detailed report about why these sites are horrible. And we presented to them first privately, because I really don't believe if I can avoid it and just sort of shocking people through the public airwaves. But then we made a very formal public announcement as well in terms of our position as a city. That report gives anyone in the community who wants to assist us in preventing these sites from being developed as prison sites a wealth of information, technical information, everything from the safety of these sites to the location, to the cost of the sites, to the environmental consequences of the sites, to the history of these sites. It's really almost inconceivable that if they had the information that we did, that these sites would have made it through any real screening about what could be suitable sites for prison. There is a reason that for over 150 years these areas haven't developed. Some of them have been flooded. The most recent rising of the Great Salt Lake flooded one of these sites. It was completely underwater. Both of these sites have really severe issues as it relates to any seismic event in ways that I really didn't fully understand until anyone in the Avenue certainly knows, and many of you may know Genevieve Atwood, who came up to me one day and said, "Are these folks kidding? Do they understand?" She's the foremost geologist and expert on the Great Salt Lake, and she said, "Do you know what would happen to one of these sites if there's a seismic event?" And it's not just the liquefaction in the case of these valley sites. It is also the wave of water coming off the Great Salt Lake. And here you have a captive population that cannot move, obviously easy. You don't just open the doors and let people out, and you don't get a lot of notice. So I could go on and on and on around why these sites are so bad from any real serious assessment. Not to mention the fact that we, like most communities, and there are exceptions, really don't want a prison. We were thinking about Sugar House, maybe they should go back to Sugar House. That obviously they moved out of there for a reason, and yeah, there we go. Actually, I'm not. People say, "Well, are there conditions for this?" And I went, "No, I don't think so." So anyway, I believe on our website, and you should be up at the table here, Esther, and join us. But I believe at our website we have this full report available. Can someone we'll let you know immediately where you can access the technical report. It's a good, thick report. It's not just a quick, we don't like it kind of report. It follows criteria and then additional criteria we think would be necessary for them to look at if they proceed further looking at the sites in this area. So
Michael Stott sent that out.
Did he? Oh, good. That's right. I saw that email. Thank you, Michael, for sending that out. I would just say mount as furious and as complete an indication of your feelings and beliefs as it relates to this site. I know the council is 100% with me on this as well. And to be honest with you, I can't imagine if they want to see a prison built in the next 10 years that they would pursue this site. But that's something we're going to have to work through and make it very clear why it's a very bad idea.
I mean, right now, our intention is to show up at the meeting on the 22nd, get as many people there as we can, and the email addresses of the commission members are on the legislature's website. We're thinking that we haven't been able to find some other forum for expressing how we feel, and maybe that's just sending them emails directly.
We'll try to provide you, Michael, since you've been coordinating this, we'll try to provide you the specifics about that forum, and obviously you're free to present yourselves in a way that I hope would be civil. And these are legislators who it's now in the hands of the legislature, and I hope would be civil, but certainly clearly expresses your views.
Thanks.
How do you feel about Saratoga Springs approving $50,000 to combat this for their site?
Well, they might feel they need to do that. I think we have adequate resources in the city to do our jobs.
I was just going to suggest that, do you guys have a Facebook page? Because, you can take some of Michael's material and put it on your Facebook page, and then all your friends see it. Right. And then
They talk about
send it to our pages.
Yeah.
I mean, and say, write letters, and here's who you write it to. So to get the word out that way.
Yeah.
And we request or ask it just in your distributions to your community members if they feel strongly about it, if they come to the meeting, and a bunch of people show up.
Great. Well, thank you for bringing that up. And I'll just say, as a former legislator and having some sense of legislators and how they react to things, they have a job to do. Most of the legislators obviously aren't from Salt Lake City, and so they don't necessarily have our views in mind. I'm confident our legislators representing us up there will do their best to advocate on our behalf. But I've noticed that there are times when if the voices get personal, attacking legislators, they can not only get defensive, it can be counterproductive. I'll just put it that way. And so, please understand, these legislators, they don't necessarily know about Salt Lake City. They're up there moving into a 45-day session where there will be over 1,000 bills introduced that will be considered in some form or another during that period of time, plus the budget. They're going to be under a lot of intense time pressures. I've noticed they're kind of backing off on some of their timelines, it looks like, for making decisions, and they've even expanded the number of sites in recent weeks. So it's very important that we respect them as elected officials for the jobs they have to do in the way that we approach them, and I think that will work to our benefit in the long run. Okay, other comments, questions? Yes.
Speaking of the legislature, I saw the other day in the paper the governor's idea to ban wood burning in the city. I think. What do you anticipate happening in the legislature with clean air and that sort of thing?
Air quality issues in the legislature. Some of you may remember that last year I devoted almost my entire State and City speech to air quality and air pollution and things that we can and would be doing as Salt Lake City, but more importantly, really recognizing that air sheds don't coincide with our boundaries. In fact, we're a very small part of both the population and the geography around air quality. And because of the way air pollution is regulated and addressed, have to rely on the state to take action. And we spent months looking at things that could and should be done around air quality. And my background, I actually wrote my master's thesis on, or it was my project that didn't turn into a thesis on the Clean Air Act, a different portion of it. And I used to teach classes in environmental law up at the university, and air pollution was always a piece of that. And so I had some background and familiarity with both the substance of the Clean Air Act and air pollution and the conditions that we face, and came up with 5 specific recommendations to the state and the state legislature in terms of action that would make the biggest difference for us in reducing air pollution, improving our air quality. While the legislature took some, I would say, very small tentative steps last year and certainly had a lot of bills before them, none of those proposals were adopted by the legislature last year, and some of them related to fuels and the refineries, like Tier 3 gas, which would, without changing really anything in terms of people's habits and use of vehicles, would dramatically reduce the pollution levels coming out of vehicles. Some of it related to allowing us at the local level to make decisions about improving funding for transit so we can have better transit, and that of course reduces vehicular use. Some of it related to the building codes, because right now our building codes, which are established by the state legislature at the state level, and we cannot have different restrictor codes locally. Our 2006 codes, if the current codes were adopted, there would be a 30% reduction in, a 30% improvement in efficiency, and thereby a reduction in terms of uses around fuel. So there are a whole series of things that I thought would make a difference, and we were asking the legislature and the state to take action on. Wood burning specifically is actually one of the items that that they can take further action on. I mean, there currently are restrictions during inversion seasons and bad pollution days. One thing they did do last year was they provided some more funding for enforcement and some more funding to help people convert who rely on wood burning as their primary source of heat. And some of that is moving forward, I'd say slowly, but it's moving forward a bit. And the governor talked about a week or so ago, whenever it was, that he was proposing a ban on wood burning during the inversion season from November to March, I think it is. And that certainly would help and make a difference. Our biggest source of air pollution are our vehicles, and so if we're not addressing that issue in a meaningful way, we're not going to make a big dent, I don't think, in the air quality problems. I'll be continuing to speak out, and it's our highest priority as a city in terms of our work at the legislature. Sometimes the way they do things and what they end up doing isn't consistent with what we'd like to see done. I think we just have to hammer away, and they need to understand, I hope, that people want more action around this issue. Uh-oh, got quiet. I talked too long, sorry. Other...
One topic that always comes up in the community councils is traffic calming. And we've done a lot in Yellcrest with speed monitoring boards and whatnot, but I think what's really missing is enforcement. Enforcement is missing, and we just need people to be ticketed, frankly.
So, I know this is a problem. It's really all over the city, and every neighborhood has it. And our motor cops work their way around the city and set up enforcement and ticket people heavily. And the situation seems to be that it'll make a difference for a little while, and then people will start speeding again, and we'll start having the same problems. And traffic calming and speeding, there are a whole series of things that can be done. At one point, we were putting in speed bumps all over the neighborhoods, and the neighbors themselves, in many instances, didn't like it, so the council stopped doing that. You know, some places we put in four-way stops to help control the speed of traffic, and you know, some places I think that's actually worked really well, but it's an inconvenience for those of us moving around, and a lot of people don't think that's worth it. And you know, there are all kinds of things that we have done and tried, and I think you know, I think a lot of them work pretty well, but it also means an inconvenience on us, and a lot of people are more interested in speeding than they are in respecting, you know, than they are in respecting the impact on neighborhoods. And you know, I know there's a great campaign in the avenues where they made up T-shirts and they did all kinds of things around the neighborhood that I think had some effect, maybe just for a while. I don't know, Marianne, you can tell me whether it made a long-term difference, but you know, from my experience in working with this, both at the neighborhood level and then in the state legislature where I was working with, is Eric still here? Did Eric join us? Where I was working really closely with the avenues in Capitol Hill on those areas. We did some things that made a huge difference, but it was an inconvenience to some people in the neighborhood. We put in four-way stops on all those major traffic roads, and you know what? It stopped the commuter traffic from, it at least reduced the commuter traffic from going through on those streets and reduced the impact on neighborhoods. You know, a lot of people, I'm sure, still today don't like it, but I think most people in the avenues accept it pretty well. And on Capitol Hill. But people have to, you almost have to work on this neighborhood by neighborhood and not just on the street of concern, but then looking at what happens if you put in an installation on a street and then it just sort of moves the problem to the next street over if there isn't a complementary effort. And, you know, we've all, those of us who've been working on this for a long time know that you know, every time we try to make these kinds of changes, like almost anything involving our streets, and there's controversy, and we need to try to develop consensus and then make something work. So, enforcement is one piece of the puzzle. But, you know, unless we're going to have cops sitting on every street every day and ticketing, which I don't think any of us want to pay for, we've got to look, you know, at a whole variety of measures. And I know there's also a backlog with our transportation folks, because these problems are all over, and they literally take them up and work through them. And I know in my neighborhood most recently, it took 6 years from the time the neighborhood actually had a full petition on this and presented the idea before some action was taken. So it's you know, there's more demand for this kind of effort than there is.
Well, two things that helped. I was very grateful. Both 21st South and Sunnyside Avenue have reduced to 30 miles per hour. But to be quite honest, very few people, well, since Sunnyside's getting down, I was amazed when I asked Robin Hutchison just to put up the speed limit sign on Sunnyside. People didn't even know what the speed limit was. Coming out of Immigration Canyon, they thought it was 45.
And they drive 45, as we know, on that street. Well, and so I would just ask you to, you know, as a neighborhood, if you can, when you're aware of issues, bring it to our transportation folks. You can come to our liaisons if you want to work through the mayor's office, and I'll say more than get it in the queue. You know, some things we can do pretty quickly, and like. You know, we do respond, as we do on so many things, to where we see particular needs, and it does make a difference, even if it's not always as long-term as we would like.
On that same note, there was talk, was it 2 years ago, about making Salt Lake City a 25-mile-an-hour city? Where did that go?
The council considered it and didn't adopt it. I think part of that too is to make downtown like 15 miles an hour or something.
It already is, but.
Oh, really?
It was around around Temple Square.
I was going to say some streets, I think, but I don't think it's across the whole downtown. So. Other things people have on their mind? we will see you in maybe a training